A very good afternoon and a hearty welcome to all our attendees. Thank you for taking time off on a Sunday afternoon to join us. And it's my pleasure to host yet another Triple IT Bangalore Alumni Connect. And it's my pleasure to have with me Professor Amit Prakash, with whom I have fond memories of visiting sub-registrar offices at Tumkur and Pavagada to understand land records and how technology can actually enable and automate some of the mundane tasks for them there. And this was like a couple of years back. Amit Prakash is an associate professor of IIT Bangalore. He is the convener of the Center of IT and Public Policy and the recently set up Center for Accessibility in the Global South. His interests lie in information systems and public policy, particularly in development sectors such as public health and nutrition, education and skill development, and livelihoods. The focus of his research and consulting efforts have been equity and inclusion in matters related to technology, designs, and public and policy choices. Welcome, sir. I am also excited to have with me two of his classmates from the 2014 batch, Anand Verma and Jyotiska Khasnavish, who have actually gone on to become amazing entrepreneurs for a couple of years now, working in the agriculture sector. Anand is the founder of Fasal. Fasal is a precision agriculture startup that helps farmers move from guesswork to data driven decision making at the farm for optimal resource utilization. Fasal helps farmers to reduce cost of cultivation and increase food quality and quantity. Fasal visions to build a more sustainable and profitable agriculture food ecosystem. Before Fasal, Anand has worked with multiple startups and started Force Bites way back in 2015. His core focus and expertise is in solving real problems for people using technology as an enabler. He has a master's in computer science from IIT Bangalore and spends a lot of time reading about how technology is changing and shaping our world. Welcome, Anand. Jyotiska is an entrepreneur and technology leader with more than 7 years of industry experience. He is an alumnus of IIT Bangalore and is currently the founder of Krishi Hub, one of the top agri-tech startups in the country. Through Krishi Hub, Jyotiska is solving some of the most critical challenges present in the agriculture sector in India, specifically related to agri-fresh produce supply chain and better price realization for farmers. Jyotiska is passionate about solving problems in India with the help of technology in order to empower Indian farmers. And today, I'm excited to be having a conversation with these three amazing panelists on the agricultural sector, technologies, and opportunities in the light of the Farm Bill. Without further ado, let's begin. My first question is for Professor Amit Prakash. Sir, if you could throw some light on the broad snapshot of agricultural markets in India, especially with respect to small and marginal farmers selling farm produce. Over to you.
Thank you, Lakshya. Uh, it's a pleasure to be part of this panel and share the screen with two amazing alumni who are doing such great work. So thank you for inviting me here. Most of what I would be saying today, uh, I don't know agriculture a lot, or I don't claim to have expertise in the agriculture sector. But I've done field work in villages, I've interacted with farmers. I have a couple of PhD students who are working with in rural areas, and I will draw from some of that experience. Sanjay is a PhD student who is working specifically with agricultural markets, and some of what I say will borrow from his fieldwork and findings. So most of us would know that in the agricultural sector that we have in the country, a majority of the farmers, they can be classified as small and marginal farmers. And small and marginal farmers are, with respect to their landholding size, and also with respect to the kind of income that these farmers are able to get out of their farm activity on an annual basis. So most or many of our, almost 70-80% of our farmers uh, can be classified as small and marginal. And amongst the small and marginal farmers, many of them are, in terms of their income, amongst the bottom, say, deciles, maybe 20th percentile in terms of the monthly per capita expenditure. So just to reiterate, I'm sure all of you are aware of this, that uh, many of our small and marginal farmers currently are below poverty line, and there is this distress that many of them are plagued with. In terms of agricultural markets, we have had these formal APMCs, or agricultural produce marketing committees, and these we brought about in the country a APMC Act in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and this was a response to the earlier exploitative arrangements where we had tenancy, and the pricing was not transparent. There were a lot of interlocking credit relationships, etc. And because of that exploitative arrangements, we brought in various types of farm reforms in the 60s and 70s, land reforms, agricultural APMCs, etc. And the 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 kind of the motivation behind all this was to ensure that the smaller farmers, they do better in terms of their income. They do better in terms of their exploitation from all the other players in the value chain, and they contribute much more than what they have been doing, and they lead a better quality of life. And with that, we brought in the APMC Act, we brought in APMCs, and these are actually physical locations where farmers can go and trade. uh, there have been various critiques of the APMCs, that they are inefficient, long and fragmented channels, infrastructure is not proper, grading cannot happen, etc. And in response to all that, we have had, say, model APMCs Act, online markets, commodity trading, and now we have this series of farm bills where we are also trying to say that APMCs are not required for a farmer to sell his or her produce. So that is what it is. In terms of the types of markets, I'll just quickly, uh, again borrowing from Sanjay's fieldwork, there are about 8,000 APMC, say, markets, and these are physical markets, large areas where farmers and traders, they congregate. Farmers come with their produce. It is put to auction, and then the traders buy the produce and sell it wherever they want to. So there are, in the country, there are almost 7,500 to 8,000 APMCs. There is one in Bangalore. Any of you who have gone to the Yashwantpur side would notice it's very close to the Yashwantpur railway station. So there is a big APMC yard there. But along with these bigger APMCs, we also have the traditional hearts, or rural markets as they are called. So almost 23 to 25,000 rural hearts across the country. In Karnataka, they are called Santhes. So these are at a much, they're probably at the level of a Hubli in Karnataka or a cluster of panchayats. But we also have a wide prevalence of traditional hearts uh, uh, in uh, in existence today, which caters to, or and most of the smaller farmers would probably find going to a traditional sante or heart easier than going to a bigger APMC, where you would go only when you have a, say, when you have sufficient quantity to take with you. In terms of, so if we look at the ways in which these farmers would sell, the typical channels are the farmers would go to the APMC market, and there they would sell it to the traders where it is regulated by the APMC, the committee. The farmers also, there's also a lot of farm gate buying that happens even before the ordinance and the act was passed. In practice, there are many uh, small traders or aggregators who go to the farm gate, and there they have been buying from the farmers, and then they take it either to the Santes or to the APMCs. They kind of identify themselves as a farmer, and then they sell it. So there have been various ways in which selling by the farmer happens. Not many small farmers would go to a big APMC unless they have a sufficient quantity of produce to be taken. Many a times, what would happen is there are these farm gate buyers who would aggregate produce from 10, 15 smaller farmers, and then they will take it to the APMC and sell it. There are smaller farmers who would go to these traditional hearts, which is more accessible to them, and there some of them would sell it uh, uh, on their own, and some would sell it to an aggregator who is present in these traditional farms. So that is what has been happening broadly in the realm of uh, or in the realm of agricultural produce marketing or selling, and the way the smaller farmers interact with the system. Yeah, and over the last few years, we also see a lot of virtual exchanges coming up. So we have the virtual agricultural market. So we have NAM, the National Agricultural Market. We have REMS in Karnataka, which have started coming in. And we also have commodity exchanges where commodity trading happens. So that's a very broad landscape of uh, the agricultural marketing, especially as it relates to the smaller farmers.
Thank you so much, Professor. Yeah, I have fond memories of visiting Sante near my place, and yeah, it's very empowering to a lot of farmers who come and directly, sell it to the consumers. Anand, any thoughts that you would like to add on to?
So again, I think very enlightening discussion from Amit sir, with respect to market and also with respect to a small and marginal farmer. I would like to, uh, probably put a different angle to how I look at agriculture in India, and especially, the kind of farming or farmers we have. The way I have started classifying from the beginning when I stepped into this journey is is a little different way. Of course, that is also perfectly right. But the way I look at farmers in India is in two segments: progressive versus non-progressive farmers. Now, when I say progressive farmers, and again, irrespective of whether they are small or marginal or very large, because what I have found, in my experience, is that a farmer who actually has a very small landholding, if he is really aware of what he has to do, or he is picking up right sort of crop to grow in right set of with right set of information in a proper manner, I would still say that he is able to do much better. He is able to get much better return, and he is economically and financially also very sort of healthy. Now, of course, there's a lot of farmers who actually have a larger land holding, but still not able to utilize that properly. So what I feel is that, with respect to, the farming or the farmers we have in India, is there's a lot of things are changing. What we are also trying, or what the let's say, if you look at largely what is happening, is that people are moving from traditional practices to modern practices. There is something called drip irrigation, which has started a couple of years back, not a couple of years back, probably a decade back, which has now been very prominent and spreading very fast. And all these things are actually making small and marginal farmer also to utilize things in a better way and become more and more progressive in nature. So this is my classification. Of course, the way we are seeing changes, I believe that if a farmer who even has a small land holding, if he can use right practices, educate himself, he can get much better return from whatever land holding he has. Now coming back to again, the way the entire market is structured in India, we all knew that there were too many intermediaries. The entire information, I mean, there were a lot of information asymmetry existed in the market itself. It was very fragmented, it was very disorganized. Now again, with respect to APMC and mandis, I mean, these things were plays I mean, these things are very old, and farmers tend to believe on mandis. They Because ultimately they has to go there. I mean, all of them have to go there and sell their produce. Now the way this entire structure was placed was not very efficient. The thought was right, but it did not executed in the right direction. So ideally, a farmer who is growing something would take his produce. Of course, if he has if he crosses that limit that he can go to mandi, he goes to mandi. There is a mandi agent assigned to him who, on his behalf, goes and takes his produce and do auction. And the very fundamental of auction was the fairness, and APMC was created to make sure that all this fairness is maintained. Now, what has really started happening was APMC did not sort of follow, or there were a lot of corruption started happening in APMC, I would say, and the fairness, the very fundamental of auction, the fairness was not maintained, and thus the one guy in this entire agri value chain is farmer who produces something was getting the least value, versus all the other intermediaries were able to get higher values. So this is one of the reasons why people are, why we started realizing that APMC, though it was designed to make sure that this works really well, so that farmers take their produce, go to the local mandi and sell it and get a fair price, was not happening. And that was the reason, I think, the new farm bill, which says that APMC should be, again, it does not say that it will be removed. It just says that farmers are allowed to go somewhere else to sell their produce. Now, if farmer gets a better price at a local mandi, why would he spend more time and money to go somewhere else to sell their produce? So what I feel is that, with respect to farm bill especially, uh, uh, the APMC Act removal is really a visionary thought. But again, there's a lot of any thought process will only work when it is executed properly and there is a transparency maintained. There is a state government and central government play a very important role. APMC comes under central government. So until unless there's a proper channel and implementation is being made in place, and there's a proper governance, it will again not work. But if there's a proper channel defined and the governance defined, then of course this is one way in which farmers will be able to get a better return of their hard work, or from their produce. So this is really my thought about APMC and the new farm bill which is coming into picture. Of course, Jyotishka would have a much better clarity because he works in that post harvest value chain. So over
Right.
to you, Jyotishka.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Yeah. So as Professor Amit has rightly pointed out, there are a lot of intermediaries. There is a lot of disparity between types of farmers. If you, for example, in India, in a realistic scenario, if you are a big farmer, then you already have a place to go to. You already have your preferred kind of trader that you would sell to. But that's a kind of luxury that the smallholder or the marginal farmers don't have, primarily because they don't, I mean, their yield will not be that much to enter the big market like APMC and all. And also one of the problem is that the APMC markets or the big mandis that they call, I mean, they are spread across the country, but they may be really far from where the farmer is. So they will have to travel quite extensively to take their produce to the big market and sell, and they don't know what rate they'll be getting. So there is a lot of challenges especially for small and marginal farmers from our experience, what we have seen. And since last 4 years, like when we started doing business in this market. So what we have seen is a lot of farmers are right now selling to a lot of private players. So one example would be us, and there are other private players in the market as well. And the facility that they would get is that like pricing will be much better than the auction price, or whatever price will be set at the Mandi auction whenever that's going to happen. And also like farmer, they don't have to really travel to take their produce from their farm to the APMC, because all the private players, they would be buying right at the farm gate. And so that is one advantage they would have. And also one of the problem that we typically like in the output space, what we face is the wastage. Like right from when you harvest the crops until you as a consumer buy. So every time the crop kind of moves from one hand to another, there are price markup, of course, but also there's wastage happening. So if you had harvested 100 kilo, so that 100 kilo, I mean, you would probably get around 60 kilo at the end. So 40 kilo would be lost on the way because of handling or logistics issues or transportation or other issues. So, so what regarding with the light of these new farm bills that have come, so what I believe that that's kind of in a step in the right direction. But I mean, since like we are 135 crore India, so I mean the adoption and the speed of adoption and all will depend against state to state. Not everyone will agree, or I mean kind of moving away from a traditional system that has been going on for last 50-60 years. So that's going to be, the adoption is going to be challenging for sure. And also like what I will be looking forward is that like how, I mean last couple of years, one of the kind of motto has been to doubling farmers income. So probably I think that that's kind of in the step in the right direction to kind of like see that if farmers are getting right price for the produces. So it will be something definitely interesting to look out for.
Interesting. Thanks, Jyotiska. One thing that really emerged common in both Anand's and Jyotiska's introduction, apart from being classmates, of course, was their interest in having technology play an enabler in solving societal problems. So we can begin with Anand. Anand, how do you see technology as an enabler in the agricultural sector?
Right, Laksha. So again, the way I see is, if you look at last few decades, what has happened in agriculture really, most of the innovation that has happened was around, input side and machinery. And again, if you look at the entire agri value chain, pre-harvest versus post-harvest, most of the innovation that has happened was, you could see that new good machines are coming, good sprayers are coming, good tractors are coming, or you could see better seeds are coming, or you could see better chemicals are coming. But if you look at what has happened in last few years, let's say 5-10 years, we have seen climate change happening. We have seen excessive utilize of fertilizer sprays, which led to soil degradation that has happened. The way weather was doing, let's say 4-5 years ago versus how it is happening now, it is very different. We cannot predict how weather is behaving. All this has led to so many problems to farmers that they are not able to basically plan their produce or plan their agriculture activities the way they were able to perform earlier. Right now, if you just look at water as a resource, India, the 80 to 85% of fresh water in India is being utilized in agriculture. And if you really look at how much is being waste in this whole process, it's more than 60%. So water is was a commodity earlier, but now we have started to focus upon saving water as a resource. All these things have had led to what is happening now in agriculture industry in terms of technology. So the kind of technologies which is coming now is again in the same agri value chain. They are also trying to solve the same problem of crop care or better supply chain. It is just that with a better approach. So if you look at the area where Fasal operates, or where we work, it's a pre-harvest stage where we are present in the entire crop life cycle of in the entire life cycle of a particular crop. And we also provide crop care. Now all the chemical companies also provide crop care, but the change that has happened now is chemical companies help farmers to protect their crop from disease and pest by excessive spray, versus if you look at Fasal also helps farmer to protect their crop from disease and pest by reducing spray. And how we do that is what we have built. If you look at again in a very similar way, soil degradation, and because of soil degradation there are a lot of unnecessary overutilized fertilizer that farmer uses on his farm, and which led to inefficient production. All these inefficiencies were there, but the kind of innovation that has happened, let's say 10 years 15 years ago, was in a very different sort of from a very different perspective, versus what is happening now is in a very different way. We are trying to solve the same problem but in a more sustainable way. So what we are now trying to do is build a more sustainable and efficient food ecosystem by utilizing the technologies that has not been utilized earlier in agriculture. And one another important aspect of how more and more technology, and especially information technology, is being utilized in this area is also because of the digital penetration. Because of the likes of Geo, everybody got a smartphone and everybody is now connected. They can look for information, they can look for more and more better practices and processes they can connect to. So for example, if you look at farmers in let's say, again, just pick one state. I belong to Uttar Pradesh, I'll just pick Uttar Pradesh. So if you look at a farmer in Uttar Pradesh, same farmer, we have probably the largest or larger land holding in terms of, let's say, one crop. Let's say pick potato as a crop. This, you will have less land holding of potato, in which potato is grown probably in some other state. Let's pick Gujarat. But the production of potato and the quality of potato is much better in Gujarat than in Uttar Pradesh. And the reason for that is, again, it is because of information asymmetry. Gujarat farmers probably has better technology at their hand. They are more progressive, they are more informed. They know they do farming, their practices are much better, versus farmers in Uttar Pradesh. Of course, there are certain crops in which they do better, but then there are a lot of farmers who have better resource at their disposal, but they are not efficient in utilization of those. So this is where we have started seeing more and more technologies are coming. Again, I mostly talk about pre-harvest, but the same goes for post-harvest as well as the entire supply chain.
Right. Absolutely, Anand. Thank you. And when I was just listening to you, I was just thinking about building for India and building for Bharat. And I think you're really focusing on building for Bharat. So really nice to hear. Jyotiska, before I go to you, I know that your answer would also echo one of the audience questions, which is, could there be some way of eliminating the middlemen in the process by enabling online ordering of agri produce, like a Flipkart for the farm? These are problems because agri products are perishable, but do you think there's a realistic scope of something like this? So while you're also sharing, Jyotiska, on how technology is an enabler, maybe you could also throw some light to Gayatri's question.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So yeah, as Anand rightly pointed out, that technology needs to be present and applied across the value chain, right from the sowing till it's harvested and basically sold to the customer or the consumer. So I mean, I'll give you a perspective on the post-harvest side, that where technology is helpful is that basically like when you harvest a crop. So I'll talk more specifically about the horticulture crops where my company is dealing with. So the clock starts ticking basically. So I mean, every crop has different shelf life, but the shelf lives are extremely short. So it can be as low as 12 hours as well, depending on the type of crop. Like if we have to build like a Flipkart for the farm, I mean, the process, I mean, the process would be different, but something I believe that we are doing something similar is that I mean, we are basically facilitating the supply chain of fresh produces where for our case, the buyers are businesses, but in the same way, the buyers can be consumers as well. But but eliminating the middlemen and process. I mean, it will be a little more complex than that. I mean, because like there are a lot of complexities involved, and it's as I mentioned, it's a huge country with a lot of people. So there are a lot of mouths to feed. So I mean, this is a realistic in a sense that this is something already happening, isn't it? Like you are eating every day, you are getting your vegetables or your produces and all, but how do you optimize on that? How do you make use of better technology in that, and make sure that you are able to provide right prices for the produces that you're buying, so the prices are propagating down to the farmers who are actually growing the crop, and also you are kind of removing the wastage as well along the process. So that's one. And also like from technology point of view, like there are a lot of complexities still present in the, especially in the output space. Is one of them would be that how do you inform the farmers about the demand? So farmers, when farmers start growing a certain crop, and let's say the harvest time, it takes 3 months. At the end of 3 months, let's say that what happens is, in a lot of cases, either there is a scarcity, for example, onion prices have gone up these days, or there is an excess. So what happens in case of scarcity? How do you kind of educate the farmers, or kind of give advisory to the farmers in a way that farmers are kind of using that knowledge to basically grow what is needed? Also, how do you make sure that farmers are not overgrowing a certain crop, which kind of leads the price to be diluted at the end, and farmers are not getting paid for what they deserve, and they have to basically throw their crops right down the side of road, as we have seen many times in past.
Right. Thank you so much, Jyotiska, and thanks, Gayatri, for that question. Professor Amit, if you could also throw your perspective from your expertise and experience on how do you see technology as an enabler in this sector, in the agriculture sector?
So by definition, technology is something that enables us. So technology will definitely enable. Now the question is, who does it enable, right? And in that, uh, is it enabling the right set of people that we want to? Is it enabling those who we want enabled more than others? And these are questions that we need to be aware of and we need to engage in. Because technology by itself may not, in the sense of, say, in the process of enabling, may actually disable a few others. Yeah, and that is definitely that is perfectly possible. Given the way a technology gets designed, given the choices that get into the features that a technology offers, we enable certain people, certain groups. In the process, there could be others who could get disabled, or there could be a relative, uh, say, enablement. So some get enabled more than others, and therefore relatively you lose out. And I think these questions we need to engage in if we need to reach out the right kind of benefits to either the smaller farmers or to the traders, or to the aggregators, those who are managing the supply chain, the consumers, etc. So, in terms of choosing the right set of design parameters and right set of features, we need to be aware of who are we trying to enable over anyone else. Because I find it very problematic when we say that a technology can have universal applicability, and it will enable everyone to the same extent. If it does, then we are actually reinforcing existing relationships. We are not changing that much. If we have to change the existing relationships, which we feel is exploitative, so if we feel that the smaller farmers are losing out, then we need to design a technology for them, right? We have to ensure that are they are the focal point of that technology, and they benefit more than anyone else from that technology. And all this I say because I've seen a lot of, I know Jyotiska and Anand, they are doing great work in whatever, in the supply chain. But I have seen a lot of technology being pushed down down the agricultural sector with an assumption that a technology for the large farmers will also be usable and beneficial to the small farmers. And again, all these farmers are of different types. Some would grow tomatoes, some would grow paddy, some would have ragi. They're all different types of farmers. Some would have two crops, some would have three crops, some only one. So all these different types of farmers we need to be aware of, and many a times uh, profitability will come in terms of, or a technology which is targeted to the larger farmers can assure or can guarantee a higher profitability. But that technology may not always be relevant to a smaller farmer. And again, smaller farmers would be of different types. So technology can definitely enable, but there are some questions about technology that we need to be aware of. We need to be critical about technology. And when I say critical, I'm not criticizing. So we need to be critical in the sense we need to be aware of what technology can achieve and what it cannot. And we should definitely question technologies while we are designing them. And we need to be ready to incorporate feedback as we go along.
So, very interesting perspective, Professor. To the audience out there, I just want to let you know that you could send us your questions for the panelists using the Q&A option in your Zoom console. And while we wait for your questions, another interesting, I think many of us touched upon Farm Bill as as and have had our perspective there. So, and I know that a lot of this is very subjective and based on your personal experience, and probably even not necessarily your startup's perspective. So, Jyotiska, if you can throw some light on, do you think the Farm Bill is a blessing for farmers in terms of opening out a lot of opportunities for marketplaces?
Yeah, what I believe that what the farm bill has done, especially those three main parts of it. For example, like farmers can sell to anyone, and the related to like whatever terms can be imposed or not cannot be imposed for contract farming, and like or the traders hoarding certain crops in cold storages in order to hike up some prices. So I believe that this is a step in the right direction for sure. But I mean, as I mentioned before, the adoption is going to be something to look at for sure. And also, like what I believe that it has removed a lot of restriction from the farmers, like what he can do or what he cannot do. Like if you force a farmer to sell only at APMC, that's extremely restrictive in nature. But with this recent farm bill, if you have given the kind of freedom or liberty to the farmers to kind of sell to anyone they would like, I mean, that's something a much needed freedom that the farmer has deserved for such a long time.
Thanks, Jyotiska. Anand, what are your thoughts on this one?
My thoughts are also very similar to Jyotishka in terms of bill. It is very visionary and a very good bill. But again, it really depends upon the way it is being implemented. The idea itself cannot do wonder until unless it is being implemented well and implemented with proper transparency which it requires, and with proper criticism also that is needed. So of course, and again, going to individual reforms which this bill has produced, APMC was a very good initiative. It opens up more channels rather than restricting anyone, and it is farmer centric sort of reform. Going back to the second amendment again, very brief, going back to the second amendment, which was contract farming. I think a lot of discussion has been going on with respect to contract farming. What I also believe is that contract farming is something which is definitely needed, because what was happening is a farmer, individual farmer, and especially a small and marginal individual farmer or a non-progressive farmer, has never been able to utilize good practices or good technology which is present now. Um, what is going on right now in terms of why people are not liking, or there's sort of a lot of opinions in terms of going on which says that large corporates can come and work with farmers, which is going to be not good for farmers. But I believe it is really going to be very good for farmers, because corporates cannot directly work with farmers alone. It's not the model they will work with. It's not a scalable model for them. So they need farmers to, they need to create a collective of farmers, and then they need to provide them sufficient technologies so that whatever input they are providing from their side get utilized and farmer produces better, and then only their model would survive, or they would survive. So in one essence, if we look deeper into this, the second reform of contract farming, it is also going to be very beneficial. And especially, as Professor Amit was mentioning, that not necessarily the technology will be available or affordable for a small and marginal farmer. But if contract farming is being utilized really well, by the means of FPOs or farmer collectives, there is a chance that all these small and marginal farmers will also be given the technologies which they earlier did not had access to. So in that essence, I think that is also something which is very good. Again, the third, I think we have a discussion around that as well, about the essential commodity. I do believe that is, it is again, from my opinion, personal opinion, I believe that is also sort of good, because of the restriction of stocking certain essential commodities had also not allowed not allowed a lot of privatization in this sector. Because if you limit me to stock something, then how would I run my infrastructure cost for the whole year? And because of that, a lot of fluctuation has happened in the market in terms of pricing and all. And we had seen that onion prices have going up and down, and then we have seen farmers throwing tomato on the street because there were a lot of supply, but there was no demand. So matching all these demand supply was dependent upon Essential Commodity Act, but that act itself is restricted a lot of players to stock up. So I do feel in a very broader way that this bill is really a revolutionary and visionary bill, but it really depends upon how it is being implemented in a proper, transparent way, and with a proper criticism.
Yeah, Anand, thank you. I'm glad you also touched upon the Essential Commodities Amendment. I was anyway going to ask that if you hadn't. Going on to some audience questions, and one of the questions we also wanted to discuss was around the role of farmer producer organizations. And this also very nicely coincides with Hitendra's question, where he asks, are there standard ERPs in the market for FPOs, or would it have to be tailor made always? I would let you choose on who wants to answer this question.
Let me answer this one. Let me just give my inputs on this. So yeah, I mean, there are ERPs related to agriculture farming, but from my experience, what I've seen is that's, not specifically applied to only in India or the Indian setting. I mean, you would require certain things like local language support and all that. I have not seen like very much in the market, or something that can be implemented quickly. So that same goes for FPOs as well. So from my knowledge, I have not seen really good examples of like farm ERPs.
I would also
Thank
like to add to Jyotishka,
you.
Lakshya.
Sure, Anand.
So again, same kind of feedback from my side. Also, I have also not seen any standardized version of this. And another reason for that is a ERP works when you have other parties also in a very structured way. Here, the way the entire thing works, I mean, there's a lot of fragmentation and decentralization, and that's why there is no specific or standard ARP which has been in place. Of course, there are a lot of companies have made ERPs which is being utilized by either a large corporate. Again, if you talk about large corporates, they do use traditional ERPs also to fit their need, but again, that goes more from accounting perspective rather than structuring the entire resource and resource management. But of course, I think there's a huge opportunity now because things are getting more structured, so there will be more opportunities in terms of building a ERP which fits the bill of individual farmers as well as FPOs as well as corporate.
Right. Thank you, Anand. We have an interesting question from Ashwini Baje, and I'm sure both of you will have your own side of the story, Anand and Jyotiska. She asks, how are farmers with small holdings responding to technology? Do you see an increase in the number of smallholders adopting new forms of pre-harvest and post-harvest technologies? She also goes on to say, like Professor Amit stated, they could also feel that technology is being forced upon them. So what are your experiences with probably some anecdotal experiences from Fasal and Krishi Hub?
Okay, so I'll share my experiences first. And I think somewhere Jyotishka mentioned earlier that he works with only horticulture farmers. We also at Fasal works with only horticulture farmers, and in horticulture is basically your fruits and vegetables, not cereals and grains and other things. Horticulture is sort of can be thought of as a more economical or more commercial crop. If you say the ROIs, the inputs are high, the stakes are high, but the output is also high. You make more money in that. Now, when I say horticulture, we are only working with 6 crops right now. In last 3 years, we have been able to work only with 6 crops. The reason for all that is because, again, it requires a lot of expertise, a lot of, this, that, and other things. And also because agriculture in India is very geographic centric. So, you cannot build something which can be utilized all across India. So if you have built a solution for grapes, probably, you go to Maharashtra and work there. If you have built something for, let's say, potato, you go and work in Gujarat. It is very, very specific to, especially if you are in the pre-harvest cycle. Post-harvest, of course, has its own challenges and its own opportunities. But in pre-harvest, it is like that. Now, when it comes to a small and marginal farmer and how they are adopting to technologies, again, as I told you in the beginning also, the way I look at farmers is not really based upon their land holding, but based upon their practices and what they are growing. For us, the customers are really not people, it is really the crop. So if you are a farmer, you have 1 acre land, if you're growing grape, you are a very, we believe that you are a very progressive farmer in terms of your practices, processes, and the way you do farming and the way you treat your farming. On the other hand, if you have 10 acres of paddy, my perception about you would be very, very different. Now, in terms of adoption, we have seen that people wants to adopt, but we as a startup, have our own limitation in terms of going to each and every farmer and each and every crop. So the way right now we are doing is the technology which we have built as of now is applicable to certain crops and certain set of farmers. But the larger belief is that we'll be able to go to each and every individual farmers, irrespective of what crop they are growing, but might not be with the same technology. It could be a different technology with a more affordable solution or better solution at a better price or at a better cost, which they can also afford. Now, in terms of reception, we have seen a significant reception. In initial phases, we had seen a lot of repulsion also in terms of a couple of there was one very one story which I remember very well was when we deployed or installed our solution to one farmer. Next day, he called us saying that your solution does not work because he was doing farming. I think it was brinjal. He was doing farming for around 12 years, and he said that temperature cannot go to 6 degrees Celsius in my farm. I'm doing farming for last 12 years. This is you take out your solution. So we stayed at his farm overnight, and at 11 o'clock, temperature went to 5 degrees Celsius. Now, when we asked how you were monitoring so far, he said that he has a temperature meter at his house, which is around 500 meters from the farm. So now what we told them is, in your farm, there is a different microclimate which exists. There are different ways plant feel atmosphere than how you are feeling in your room versus how you'll feel in the field. So, these were initial, and after we did that, then he realized why he was not able to achieve the maximum yield, which, because at certain temperature, your root freezes and it cannot uptake nutrients. So there were a lot of stories like this, which we had faced in the beginning. There were a lot of repulsion happening. But then when we started breaking those, traditional mindset and barrier, we started seeing more and more adoption across. That's one story. And, that's how we are seeing adoption happening.
Sure. Thanks, Anand. And just in the interest of time, I will probably pass on the next question to Jyotiska, which comes from Milind. Milind asks, are you aware of any Uber Oyo style platforms for one, credit availability with better terms, two, cold chain availability for marginal farmers, and three, relevant produce based on soil using watershed management policy of the region? Wow.
All right, so let me just take this one by one. So yes, there are few startups, I think they have come in last 2-3 years. So they have kind of easing the pain of credit availability for farmers, because traditionally, if you see that when you as a farmer have to borrow from a lender, so the interest rates or like credit terms or whatever, that goes to the roof, like you're paying like 3%, 4% a month. But I mean, yes, there are a couple of companies. I personally know a couple of them. So they are working in Maharashtra. So they are kind of like democratizing entire like credit availability thing with especially to horticulture farmers. So yes, that's the first. And then second is cold chain availability for marginal farmers. I have seen this being done with the help of FPOs. So if I have, there are few like fantastic FPOs around Bangalore in Hoskote, Kolar, and Malur. So I have seen that they are actually kind of aggregating the producers together and availing the cold chain through their entire like strength, whatever they have. So that is third. I don't have an answer for that. So if Anand knows, he can take that one.
Yeah, again, I think I also don't have much insight into that, but what I feel, what Jyotish also pointed out, is that most of the marginal farmer are being able to utilize these things under the shed of FPO or the farm community which they are creating. So again, with respect to credit availability, also even we we have seen a lot of questions and a lot of requests coming from farmers also with this in the regard of credits. And there are really good startups who are right now working in this space and trying to solve this problem in a much better way. And there have been a lot of even funding has happened in this space very recently as well. With respect to cold chain, again, the technology itself is very costly, so it cannot be directly available to marginal farmers. So as Jyotiska also mentioned, FPOs or farm communities are something which is which is trying to utilize this technology as a whole, and then enabling other farmers to use it. So, and again, I mean, not just I think watershed management policy, but if you look at the entire soil testing that has been the soil test policy which has been initiated by Government of India, it did not really do anything any significant. I mean, it did not really add any value to it because of a lot of problems, and the problems were around the processes and people. But right now, what I'm also seeing is there are a lot of startups have recently have been funded, which is actually working in terms of providing better soil test to farmers, and not just soil tests, but so traditionally what was happening is soil companies were giving soil test reports, but not any advice on what farmer need to do if these are the conditions. But right now the new kind of companies which is coming, they are also providing or guiding farmers along with the test report that what they need to do.
Sure. Thank you, Anand and Jyotiska, for answering that question. I think we're almost at time, but I don't want to miss the opportunity of asking you one last, one concluding question, which is if each of you could just give your thoughts in a sentence or two on what do you think the future holds for us with respect to the opportunities in the agricultural sector going forward. Professor Amit, if we can hear you first.
Yeah, If you can allow me, say two or three sentences and not one.
Sure,
There's
sure.
one point I wanted to make, and that was with respect to this notion of middlemen and intermediaries as always exploitative, not adding any value, but cornering all the surplus that exists in the chain. And while that is a popular, or that is how we have been fed through the popular discourse, in most of my field works, I have not found it always true. There are a lot of people involved in the chain, and they bring a lot of value. They absorb risks, they provide aggregation facilities, and various other issues. While I don't, there are also cases where exploitation of farmers happen, but this broad brush painting of everyone other than the farmer in the chain as exploitative may not always hold true. And to that extent, asking for a technology intermediary to substitute for a physical intermediary may also lead to similar kind of exploitation and appropriation in the value. So we don't know if you have a Flipkart type intermediary, if that Flipkart type intermediary is less or more exploitative than the middleman who is physically present in that location. So we don't have any conclusive evidence to say that others cannot. The second point I wanted to make was, and this is, I think Anand was talking about contract farming and others. Uh, the contractual arrangements work well when the terms of trade are fair. And the terms of trade are fair in those cases where the contracting parties, they are more or less at the same, say, so their agencies are not very different. When it comes to the smaller farmers, having fair contractual arrangements will be a big issue. And that is why a lot of concerns around opening up contract farming is being talked about, right? And that is also one of the issues with exploitation happening even in APMCs. So, so the second point is that we need to be aware of this agency requirement, this relative social and other distance that comes when you engage in fair terms of trade. And unless the terms of trade are fair, uh, it would be very difficult for the benefits to pass on to the party which is in a relatively weak position in that trading arrangement. And small farmers currently are. They are, uh, and they would need support, and that's where state-led institutions like APMCs have a role to play. The panchayats can come in, but the small farmers would need, in terms of a contractual arrangement that is fair to them, some sort of a support from the state, and that should not be that should not go away, is what I would feel. The state needs to play that role to ensure fairness is restored. Uh, the technology has a lot of potential. Uh, in fact, there is a lot of potential in terms of improving the inefficiencies that exist in our agricultural sector. A right kind of technology can unlock a lot of these inefficiencies. I think one of the ways in which one can address that, I'm sure Jyotiska and Ananda are doing that. I was in a assistive technology conference yesterday, and there was this gentleman from the Helen Keller Institute National Center in New York. And he was saying, in the accessibility movement, there is this famous quote, nothing for us without us. And if we are trying to do something for the small farmers, we need to ensure that they are also involved, they also participate, and their voices are heard. Thank you, Lakshya.
Thanks, sir. Very, very interesting sort of conclusion to, everything we spoke about probably for the past 1 hour. Jyotiska, if I can go to you and if you could share your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, my thought would be what I would like to see in at least next 2-3 years would be to see a lot of collaboration between the agri-tech startups in India, because there are a lot of problems to solve, like, to be honest. And what I see is that a lot of the agriculture startups are currently working on in their own silos, and if there is some kind of like data sharing kind of policy kind of adopted between companies, so that it can kind of help everybody in general. So that would be my take.
Thanks. Anand, if you could have the last word.
Sure, Laksha. Laksha, I also think collaboration is one thing which we all as startups are looking for, especially in agriculture, because I think somebody also mentioned the question that a lot of agriculture startups are coming, definitely because the value chain is very long. And as I told you that, we are in agriculture for last 3 years. We are able to work only with 6 crops, and that too, very specific crops, very specific geographies. So the country is big. Everybody has to eat, and then we need to produce more. There's a lot of opportunity which existed. It's just that the better collaboration between startups, because again, in terms of, so I think Farm Bill is just one recent initiative or bill that has come, which has sort of increased interest in terms of agri-tech. But apart from this, there is a lot of things which is happening in silos, as Jyotish also mentioned, and we need to collaborate more and define this structure. The one thing which I see prominently happening is there's a lot of initiatives is being taken up by state government and central governments as well. But again, probably in next 3 to 5 years, what we would see is more sort of collaborations happening, more sort of companies coming together and probably forming a larger group to solve the entire agri value chain problem, which right now is working in their independent niche segments. So that is also a way to go. That way we will be able to build what we aim to build, a sustainable food ecosystem which is efficient and profitable for all.
Sure. Thank you so much, Anand. I think thank you to all the 3 panelists, Professor Amit Prakash, Jyotish, and Anand. It was really a super engaging conversation, and thank you to all the attendees for I know we got a lot of questions today. We were able to take most of them. So thank you for your time, and we're really excited to come back to you next month with another webinar connect. Take care and stay safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laksha. Thank you, team.
Thank you,
Thanks
Laksha.
a lot.
Thank you, Jyotishka, Anand, Amol, Vani.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.